Hi guys, it's Ty and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing a review over Stephen King's Pet Sematary, and the first part of the video is actually going to be a spoiler-free video on the book, and then the next part of the video is going to be a spoiler-filled review over the two movies based off of the book. And if you don't want to be spoiled at all for the movies, I will leave like a banner or something at the bottom of the video that will say like spoilers, just so that you'll know not to continue on with the video. But I will say that if you don't want to be spoiled at all for the book, that I would not continue on with the video, because getting into the spoilers for the movies, you will be spoiled for the book. So just make note of that. So we will go ahead and get started with the spoiler-free review for the book. So this is the version of Pet Sematary that I read. And if you have no idea what Pet Sematary is, this is one of Stephen King's adult horror novels. And this is following the Creed family. So it's a family of 4. We are following Louis Creed, who is a doctor, and we're following his wife Rachel and their 2 children by the names of Ellie and Gage. And they have recently moved from Chicago to Ludlow, Maine. And pretty early on in the story, right after they moved into their house, they noticed that there is this path leading from the back of their house to like this cemetery. And their neighbor Judd, who lives right across the road, decides that one day he's going to take the whole family on a hike back to that cemetery, and they find out that it is actually called the Pet Sematary. And he kind of gives them the rundown and tells them that people have been burying their pets back there for years, and that he has actually buried one of his dog Spot back there back in the day. And he kind of gives them the rundown of the Pet Sematary, and pretty much the story takes off from there. Obviously the story centers around the Pet Sematary and all the horrors that takes place in this cemetery. So that is all that I'm going to give as far as the synopsis of this story, because that's actually all the back of this book gives, and that's all that I'm going to give. I actually watched the original movie years ago before reading this book, and I knew what was going to happen. So I didn't realize that the synopsis didn't say more than that. But I do think that not knowing much going into this is a lot better. So I'm just gonna leave it at that. But I will say, like I said, it's a horror novel, and I do think that this delivers on the horror. I think this does a good job at building up the tension in the story, and I think the pacing as far as like the horror elements goes does a really good job. I think it doesn't just kind of like build up all the suspense and then throw all of the horror elements at you and then be done. It does a good job of giving you little horror elements throughout the story, and really keeps you engaged throughout the entire thing. And I really enjoyed that about this book. I will say it does a really good job at dealing with grief. There's a lot of death that takes place in this book. And one of the things that I like that it does as far as talking about grief is how it explains like death to children, because like I said, they have 2 children. And because there is so much death taking place in this book, they at some point have to have that conversation with one of their children. And so it touches on that a lot. And it has that conversation. And then we have their mother Rachel, who had a really traumatic experience in her childhood that has followed her into her adulthood. So we are following her as she is dealing with her past trauma and how that is affecting her throughout her adulthood, and how that's kind of affecting her and her children, and how she has to cope with how that trauma is affecting her and how she deals with death. So everything just kind of feels like it comes back full circle, and it all has to do with like death. So, I mean, this is a really heavy story, but if all you want and all you're looking for is like a horror story, I feel like you're going to get that in here. Another thing that I really enjoyed in here, which is like not so much to do with like the story itself, but as someone who is trying to pick up more Stephen King novels, I have heard the more that you read with Stephen King, you will start to notice that a lot of his stories kind of like connect with each other, and you will start to see that characters start to pop up in other stories, or like different things are mentioned in other stories. And I actually found a couple of Easter eggs in this one. I think I found like two different times where different things were mentioned in here from other books, and I tabbed those and I was really happy. I won't say what those were because I don't want to spoil that here, but I was really excited about that. I did ended up rating this at 4 stars. I really wanted this to be like a 5-star read for me, and the only reason it wasn't was because one reason was because I feel like Stephen King does this thing where he gets kind of long-winded towards the end of his books, and he doesn't know how to reel stuff in, I feel like sometimes, and he just keeps going, and I'm like, it needs to be over. And I kind of feel like this kind of suffered from that a little bit, and it kind of took me out of the story, and I just kind of made me upset a little bit. And then another thing that I didn't really like was Judd, who I said was the next door neighbor, or the neighbor across the street, really. He would go into these stories where he was kind of explaining to them the different things that was going on at the pet cemetery. Well, when he would go into these stories, they were so long, and they were like pages and pages long, and I was like, oh my god, like, can we wrap these stories up, please? Like, these stories don't need to be this long. So that was another thing that I was just like, oh my gosh, it's just like some of the things were just too long for me. Other people might not mind it, but for me, they were just too long, and those were just a couple of things that I just didn't enjoy. But overall, I really enjoyed this one. I think, like I said, I'm not like a Stephen King connoisseur. I don't really have, that much to say about him, but I think this is like one of those books that's a really good place to start with him. And it wasn't like really scary, but it was to the point, where I was reading it, and I, might have looked over my shoulder a time or two when I was reading it. But I really enjoyed this. So I am going to go ahead and get into the spoiler-filled portion where we are going to talk about the 2 movies. And so they made 2 movies, one in 1989, and then the other one, the remake to the one in 1989, in early 2019. Now, there was a Pet Sematary 2 that was made after the one in 1989. I seen it a few years ago, but we're not going to talk about that. I don't know why they made that. I don't know who asked for that. Yeah, we're not going to talk about that one. So we're going to kind of talk about the one that was made in 1989 first. And I will say the first one that they made, the 1989 one, was for sure like spot on with the book. There were only a few little differences that were not the same in the book, but for the most part, it was pretty spot on. Like, they only changed a few things. Now, a couple of the things that they changed that I didn't really understand what the purpose of that was one of them was, so they didn't have Judd's wife. So in the book, Judd had a wife, Norma, who played, she was the side character, but she was in the story quite a bit. And she wasn't like in the story, she wasn't in the movie at all. She wasn't mentioned, not to my knowledge. And if she was, I missed it, but she wasn't mentioned at all. So I didn't really understand that. And then in the movie, they had like this maid, or I don't know if she was like a maid or like a housekeeper or something. And she ended up like hanging herself. So there was a scene in the movie where she hung herself in a basement, and they like went to her funeral, but they never explained like why she hung herself or what the purpose of that was. Nothing. Like it was just like, oh, she hung herself, so we're gonna go to her funeral. It was kind of like they mentioned that Rachel didn't want to go to her funeral, which there was a scene in the book where Norma died, Judd's wife, Norma died, and there was a whole big conversation of why Rachel didn't want to go to the funeral, which if you read the book, you'll know why that conversation took place. So it made sense in the book, but in the movie, this unknown maid person ended up hanging herself, and they mentioned that Rachel didn't want to go to the funeral, but they never expounded on that. So I don't know why they included that in the movie with some random person that we don't know why she hung herself. That was strange to me. I didn't understand that. But anyways, that was weird to me. Other than that, I liked the 1989 version of Pet Sematary. Watching it now in 2021, it's cheesy. The cat looks fake. I mean, everything is, you know, it just looks old, dated, but it's a pretty good movie. It scared me then when I watched it, because I want to say I watched it years ago. So I know when I watched it back then, it was scary, I think. But now when I watched it, I kind of giggle. I like Jade. I like Gage's character. The little son. I thought he was a cute little demon child. I really enjoyed that. So listen, I'm here for that 1989 Pet Sematary. Now, this 2019 Pet Sematary, I don't know why. I don't know who said we need to do a remake of Pet Sematary, because we didn't need that. I don't know who asked for that. I don't know why they did that, because this ain't even the same movie. So I don't know why they did this, because they changed everything. I don't understand. So let's get into it. So again, they don't have Judd's wife, Norma, but at least they didn't mention Norma. So, okay, I'll give them that. And then they also, so the big thing that happened, which I didn't understand, was that Gage didn't die like he did in the book. Ellie died, which I don't understand. And so that, to me, that was going to change the whole course of this story. So now we don't even have the same story. The whole story is different. So now Ellie died. Okay. And so now, you know, like in the book, how Lewis has sent Rachel and Ellie away so that he can kind of bring Gage back through the cemetery. Rachel and Gage ended up coming back, and now they're trying to fight off this evil Ellie. And then Ellie, I can't even talk about it without, this is ridiculous. So then Ellie ended up killing Rachel and then burying Rachel and then bringing Rachel back. So then we have two, are they like zombies at this point? I don't know. So then they're like, so now we have Ellie and Rachel that are like zombie people. I don't know. And so then Rachel kills Lewis, and now we have 3 zombies. So then we have Rachel, Ellie, and who's that? Rachel, Ellie, and Lewis. Oh, and the cat. I forgot about the cat. And so now they're after poor little Gage. So they're building a whole family of zombies. Like, I don't understand. So I didn't get that. And so then, the 2019 movie just was so different. I just didn't understand why they changed so much from the book. So I just didn't understand that. And then they had like little changes, like, you know, Pascal, who was haunting Lewis and trying to, you know, Victor Pascal was the student that died his first day at the university, and he was trying to warn Lewis not to go to the cemetery. Well, he was white in the book. He was white in the Pet Sematary, the 1989 movie, but he was black in the 2019 movie. I don't understand why they do that kind of stuff, but that was weird. And then I didn't understand that. And then and then the other difference was like Lewis drugged Judd in this 2019 movie so that he can go bury Ellie, but he didn't drug Judd in the book or the other movie. Judd just fell asleep. So I didn't understand why Judd just couldn't fall asleep. Like, why are we drugging him? I didn't understand. And I didn't understand. And then Rachel died 3 different ways. Now that I'm thinking about it, Rachel died 3 different ways. She died a different way in the book. She died a different way in the... No. She didn't die 3 different ways. I lied. She died a different way. Yes, she did. She died a different way. I'm tripping. She died a different way in the book. She died a different way in the 1989 movie. And she died a different way in this 2019 movie. I don't understand. So there are differences in between the books and the movies. But like I said, between the book and the 1989 movie, for the most part, they got it spot on. There were only like minor differences. Nothing to the point where I was like, it was so different that it was just like ridiculous. But from the book to the 2019 movie, I don't even know what book they read, because it wasn't the same book that I read, unless it was a different version of Pet Sematary somewhere floating around out there. And if there is, maybe I need to go read that book, because that's a different book than I got. So I don't know. But as far as the book goes, I enjoyed this. I had a fun time reading this. I really did. This is bringing back my Stephen King kick. My channel was supposed to be me reading more Stephen King than I'm reading. So this has reinvigorated that spark in me. So again, I did give this a 4 stars. If I had to recommend one of the movies to you guys, I would say watch the Pet Sematary 1989 version of it. And if you want to laugh, watch the 2019 version of it, and then follow that up with Pet Sematary 2. The two movies that didn't need to be made. There you go. Well, that's all that I have for you guys today. Hope to see you guys next time. Bye.